What was the biggest political scandal in your country? A previous Teoa of ours, Prime Minister Charlie Haughey in the 1970s-80s, illegally bought an island off the coast of Kerry and built a mansion there, lording over it like a Bond supervillain. That is one of the more absurd scandals, alright. Especially because the population at the time were told they were living way beyond their means. I was more thinking of all of our horrific ones like the mother and baby homes. The two babies, and in 20 years time it'll be direct provision. The way we treat our vulnerable is nothing short of horrific. South Africa. Our health minister left coronavirus patients to die in tents, and when he got questioned he demanded an apology from the broadcaster. Add to this the rife corruption and how our 500 billion has been stolen. No one is accountable. No one ends up in jail. They get put on suspension for years on full pay while people starve. Let's not get started on the rapes and murders every day. The list goes on and on and on. My country has been without a government for more than a year. Twice. The first time my country has been without a government was for 541 days. A Guinness World Record. At the moment we are without a government for the second time. Our elections were on the 26th of May 2019. So at the moment we are at 479 days without a government. Here's to hoping we achieve a world record for a second time. I live in Belgium, BTW. Slovakia. A journalist got killed 2 years ago in February. Mafia was involved and it's still not resolved. In my country, Ukraine. Every month there are attacks on journalists, activists which will never be investigated. Serious murders usually take place once in 1-2 years. A 30-plus-year-old politician slept with a 15-year-old girl. It was technically legal, so he suffered no consequences other than people now thinking he's a disgusting piece of crap. Jep Kofod Akinep Kofod, F. King Kofod, is now the Minister of Foreign Affairs. It happened at a political youth seminar where he had given a lecture. It was hosted by his political party. You know, the same party who have now made him a minister. Our president tried to create a law that would require all churches without paperwork to get owned by the government. Of course, many of the churches in Montenegro were created way before paperwork was needed, when Serbia and Montenegro were the same country. So basically the government would be getting tons of land that isn't even Montenegrin, so massive protests followed. Keep in mind this was all during the COVID lockdown, so massive protests just led to more people getting infected. Also, this caused tons of cultural hate between Montenegrins and Serbs, when in retrospect we're all the same Slavic people. IDK how to explain it very well, since I myself do not understand the situation the best. In Greece this list is never ending and I can't even choose any as the biggest one. Politics and corruption is the same thing here. Isn't that the entire history of Greece? You were called the dawn of Western civilization. Greece invented democracy, republics, philosophy, medicine, ethics and self-sufficient economies, but ironically it was the destruction of ancient Greece and continued to pillage Greece and Europe to this day. Pericles of Athens, aka the father of democracy, knew corruption was a fault line and warned about how easily democracy can be exploited, and his words echo true to this day. In Puerto Rico, our governor had a chat with other government officials and some of his close friends where they discussed corruption plans. They admitted to manipulating the press. They made fun of the victims of Hurricane Maria. They made sexist and homophobic comments. And it all got leaked to the public. Everyone was pissed and we formed the biggest protest in our island's history, which forced him to resign. That was a fun summer. Couple years ago in Chile, journalists found that 1,113 kids living under the tutelage of the state were already dead. Their deaths were not reported, nor investigated. When the news got out, the Minister of Justice, Javiera Blanco, who was in charge of the SENAME, National Service for Minors, was then destituted only to be given a lifetime job in the State Defense Council. This was never talked about again. A politician accidentally bought a chocolate bar with the government's credit card. I like this is our biggest scandal. Not really a scandal. But one day in the 1960s, Our Prime Minister decided to go for a swim. The catch? He went missing and was never found. Fun fact. There is a Harold Holt Memorial Swimming Centre in suburban Melbourne. It was already under construction at the time of Holt's disappearance. Poland. Technically there is no year without scandal. One of the former prime ministers was accused for being Russian spy in 90s. Leaked recordings which ended governments. Minister of Health bought respirators for COVID patients. From arms dealer. Entire scandal with elections. Now the parliament votes for bill which allows politicians avoid punishment for anything if they prove they acted against COVID. After the subprime crisis and the zeros. Portuguese Prime Minister Socrates was charged with white-collar crimes for hustling public funds to finance void contracts in public construction and for changing laws to benefit certain friends and party members. He got jailed and is currently in house arrest. High-profile people of our political environment still visit him on a regular basis. Ever since then, no majority was achieved during votings and the country has since been ruled by party coalitions. The Queen fired the Prime Minister, who was democratically elected, Australia. 1975. Also, in 1967, another Prime Minister went swimming at a beach and was never seen again. I say this every time this comes up. But John Kerr deserved the news for his treachery. And his grave should be under a public toilet. And the recent release of his correspondence shows he was asking constitutional questions of the Queen's aides. But I agree with the other reply that the Yanks probably had a hand in it too. Easily our biggest political scandal. Venezuela. I don't think the Reddit servers have the memory space for a reply that does this justice. But still. Here's a taste from Reuters, July 2019. Geneva. Venezuelan special forces have carried out thousands of extrajudicial killings in the past 18 months and then manipulated crime scenes to make it look as if the victims had been resisting arrest. The United Nations said on Thursday in a report detailing wide-ranging government abuses targeting political opponents. Special action forces described by witnesses as death squads killed 287 people in 2018 and another 569 by mid-May of this year. In what are officially termed by the Venezuelan government operations for the liberation of the people. United Nations investigators reported. Double quote. The Prime Minister and his associates in the Conservative Party took $360,000 in bribes to award one company the right to build the railway to the West Coast. The scandal was uncovered and Sir John A. MacDonald resigned as Prime Minister in disgrace in 1873. MacDonald was elected PM again in 1878 and continued serving in that position until 1891. Can't forget Sir John A. MacDonald for initiating, supporting, defending and funding the residential school system in Canada, which harmed Indigenous children significantly by removing them from their families, depriving them of their ancestral languages, exposing many of them to physical and sexual abuse, and forcibly enfranchising them. In 1920, under the Indian Act, it became mandatory for every Indian child to attend a residential school and illegal for them to attend any other educational institution. UK. It seems that currently everything is a political scandal. They're not even shocking or surprising anymore. Current UK scandals are way overblown, whereas we have done some seriously shady tea in the past. The worst was probably the Suez Crisis, where we conspired with the French and Israelis to invade Egypt and take control of the Suez Canal. Really that Trump's team on. Come to Haiti and see what they've been doing to our women and children. When you see how our Democrat rebels, then say Trump is problem. 8 girls was taken from families in middle of night almost every night, and you Americans have none issues. Your media won't cover the news they make here. Trump is an innocent fly compared to the white demons liberals that say they help us but take our kids. Why not media for us? Because no one cares if it's not US, UK, France, or Germany. Unfortunately, I've heard of this before and it's absolutely atrocious. My heart goes out to all those kids and their families. Pakistani here. Not sure Reddit has enough space to cover our political scandals. We've got PM, sitting and X, assassinations, military takeovers, PM tried and hanged for murder, President plane crash, mysterious murders of PM's brothers, entire thing with war on terror, PM sacked for refusing to write a letter, PM sacked due to Panama Papers money laundering charges. Basically no PM has ever served a full term. And countless other corruption, murder, horse trading and stuff scandals. So pick one and I'll give you the details. One of the biggest in the US was the Pentagon Papers. It was a huge volume of documents that detailed from 1945 to 1968 that had gotten leaked to the public about America's involvement in Indochina, which also of course includes the Vietnam War. Basically the papers said that presidential administrations from Eisenhower to Nixon had said that the situation in Indochina Vietnam was an unwinnable scenario, but they kept sending troops to die over there for a pointless cause. The whole tragedy that my country, Brazil, is, most people here are willing to die for their ignorant beliefs than to admit they're corruptible and that it's also their fault that we're spending almost all of our wages into food and taxes, working like slaves, not having any prospects for the future other than to survive instead of thrive. Since they love charlatans, always have and will elect them over truly qualified and respectable candidates. They're politicians. So we're FK'd anyway. But so many people believe the lie told by mainstream media about the left doing these spectacular thefts to our country, which nobody has proof of. Only accusations. Because well, it didn't happen, that they voted for Bolsonaro. Because they had no choice. There were all sorts of candidates and they went out for the one who pretended to get shanked. For the one who skipped all debates. For the honest for the family, and now our country is being sold to the highest bidder, and soon democracy and American military bases will also be in our country, I guess. And every activist here is so tired of fighting for dumb people and receiving nothing but hate and ignorance that we're lost and hopeless. Really. India. Indira Gandhi, the then Prime Minister of India, imposed emergency Prime Minister's rule following her opposition winning the lawsuit of her winning the election by corruption. Mass forced sterilization of people followed, which was spearheaded by her son. The court ruled that she won the election by using unfair means and she was then barred from taking part in elections. Edit. Wanted to acknowledge that this isn't the biggest political scandal of India. In such a big and diverse nation with the political scene that is present here, there have been massive scandals and it'd be unfair to say that this was the biggest of them all. PS. Disregard any mistakes as English isn't my first language. Argentina. Cristina Kirchner. There are like 6 or 7 guys who confessed money laundering with Peronist representatives during our actual vice president's 2 periods before that are being released from prison right now. Also, an attorney investigating her appeared with a shot in the head and the evidence has been so manipulated that became impossible to solve. Also, her former secretary died suspiciously this year and his patrimony was estimated in 900,000. Yes. A f-king secretary. I could go on, but probably I would end up dead. 1MDB. I'm from Malaysia and God has this scandal destroyed my country. If you guys DK about this. Basically Malaysia's ex-prime minister, Najib Razak, created a company called 1MDB and was aimed at generating extra revenue to fund development around my country. He ended up funneling all the money to his bank account. He was convicted recently but some idiots still believe in his innocence. Bear in mind this is a very short summary of the scandal. Lots of entrepreneurs and politicians were involved in a huge apparatus of bribes which became known as manipulate or tangentopoly. When said apparatus was uncovered in 1992 by the Milanese judiciary, it caused great turmoil within the major political parties, mostly the Socialists and the Christian Democrats. The resulting distrust among the public towards the political system of the time caused the dissolution of the parties involved in the scandal and the foundation of new parties from the ashes of the old ones and the rising of a new ruling class. Part of which was also the Milanese entrepreneur and publisher Silvio Berlusconi, who won the general elections of 1994 with his newly founded party Forza Italia. The cultural impact of the scandal was such that the media refer to the period from the establishment of the Republic, 1946, to the Tangentopoli scandals as the Prima Repubblica, First Republic, and the period afterward as the Seconda Repubblica. Australian here. Ignoring the constant leadership spills. Most recent one I remember was when a news channel ran a doco exposing the One Nation Party for trying to cozy up to the NRA, US, and probably some other stuff I don't remember. After apparently running a sting operation for the previous 3 years. A little while later a candidate for the party resigned because footage of him in a strip club was aired. Edit. The leader of the One Nation Party also pulled a stunt where she walked into the Senate dressed in a burqa to try get it banned. And recently has been fooding with Australia Post over stubby holders. Then there was the one time a minister called the leader of the opposition a CNT in the middle of parliament. And then there's the prime minister that just straight up disappeared into the ocean one day. I could go on. Not the biggest scandal we've had, but in Canada we had a scandal involving a major charity that holds several events, Day, where the prime minister and his family members often spoke. The charity said his family was never paid for it, but turns out Justin Trudeau's wife, mom, and brother were paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for it. Our finance minister, who has since resigned, also got to travel using funds from this charity. He was also responsible in giving a $900 million grant to this charity for a student program. A charity his daughter conveniently works for. Again, not the biggest scandal and wasn't necessarily illegal, but it was extremely unethical. It is important to note this happened about a year after Justin Trudeau's government had another huge ethics scandal involving Trudeau telling the Minister of Justice not to interfere in an ongoing case criminal involving the company SNC-Lavalin. Lebanese here. Every day is a scandal. Beirut explosion. Money laundering. Offshore accounts. Healthcare is a scam by itself. Spent years with parliament not being able to form government. I could go on and on for 20 more pages for each month all the way back to the 70s. I guess the whole country. I live in Argentina. On the one hand we have an opposition that denies the disappearance of 30,000 people in the last military dictatorship, and on the other hand we have a government that is continually failing in the economic sector. The biggest scandal in the UK is that cannabis is illegal and impossibly hard to access medicinally. Even though the UK is the largest exporter of medicinal cannabis in the world. For those interested, the cannabis in question is grown in one of Europe's largest greenhouses in Norfolk. By British Sugar. It is used to make Sativex and Epidiolex. Close bracket. The ex-Home Secretary's husband and ex-Prime Minister's husband both had money tied up in these enterprises but still refuted cannabis had any medicinal value or put any consideration towards the legalization.